Please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Andrew Holland, CEO of Avendus Capital, is with us. Andrew, good morning. Markets at new high, 11,500. Your thoughts?
Well, it's tempting to kind of throw cold water on it all, but markets, I mean, it's great that we're at a new high, but it just kind of feels a little bit like, December of last year coming into January when, everything was looking good. But, at that time, the turmoil was in the bond markets. And the turmoil at the moment is in the currency markets, and whilst you're getting some rallies in the metals, commodity prices are still way down from their highs. So usually it leads to the equity markets at some point. It's not happening at the moment, but it normally does. So we just have to wait to see when that day is. It's not if, it's when. All of this turmoil in the currency markets does impact the global equity markets. So as usual, I'm a little bit skeptical, but have been all the way through, actually.
Okay. Well, so if you have to play a long shot in this market, what may be short candidates at all? Andrew, it looks like it's firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, it's a difficult, in terms of, saying which sector is going to underperform. There are underperformers, obviously, but you could just have it. It's very rotational, as you've been pointing out for many days now. So you have to be very active on your hedging strategies in these kind of markets. But our favourite sectors remain our favourite sectors. We haven't really changed. I think the one thing I would say is that I think possibly the rupee has done its course in the short term. I think the only pressure would be if the China-US trade talks fail. That would put further pressure on emerging market currencies, including India. But I think we're there or thereabouts done in the short term on what we can see so far.
Okay, by the way, the space to be in right now is pharma, because a lot of these stocks, remember, had big rallies last week. Once again, names like Glenmark Pharma is up 4%, Cadila Health is up almost about 3% Stride Shasun, and the Nifty Pharma index itself has moved to the high point right now. So looking pretty good there. Divi's Labs also added to that list, up about 3%. Andrew, hi, good morning. I want to ask you about pharma, but before that, what do you do with, stocks like Infosys? I mean, not talking specific stocks, but when companies that are in an uptrending sector go through some problems of their own, do you think this is a good buying opportunity?
See, we like the IT sector. We think a lot of the problems that they've had in the past are starting to ease off. It's not fully gone, as we've seen, obviously, with the management change there. But, it's a sector that's in transition. We're starting to see some reasonable growth. It's not going to go back to the heady days of the 90s, that's for sure. But you're getting some reasonable growth. So I'm more constructive on the IT sector. And these kind of things, you're bound to see as a company keeps changing its kind of way of thinking and the way it operates. So there'll be people who do not believe in that or don't like the change, and therefore move, and that's okay. It's not I don't see it as being a real problem.
Okay, well, I guess the toast of the last 1 month have been the corporate lenders, Andrew. We saw fairly big rallies in the Axis, in the ICICI, in SBI. And right now I'm reading a Credit Suisse report which says that after 6 years of rise, NPAs were down 20 basis points to 11.5% in the first quarter, confirming their thesis of NPA levels having peaked. And the drop in NPAs was on the back of write-offs. Obviously, some big write-ins are expected if the SR case is decided in the NCLAT this week itself. That's 37,000 crores, a sizable chunk, much of it provided for already. So an improvement in P&L can be expected. Is all that in the price in the corporate banks, or would you still buy them?
We like some of the corporate banks, but this whole thing about the NPA slowing down and it's we'll get recoveries. I think that is priced in to a lot of the banks in terms of the expectation. But what you've got to now look for is that as India economy continues to grow, is who's going to be the market leader and who's going to be able to to lend to the corporates, and that's where the private banks and some of the more better corporate banks will do very well. I'm still sceptical that the PSU banks will be able to deliver in this kind of rally. They just don't have the balance sheet to do it. So I think that I still think we're 1 to 2 quarters away from being more constructive on PSU banks. I still think there's quite a lot of headwinds for them in the shorter term. So you will get these relief rallies on expectations, but it's then delivering the growth thereafter, and I just rather be with the better banks for the time being. It's tempting to look down, but it's not tempting enough yet.
Okay.
When you say better banks, you mean the retail guys, or you mean the better of the corporate lenders?
Yes, both of those, latter, yeah.
Okay. Both of those.
A lot of stocks doing well, by the way, right now, and I think the stock that's surging is ONGC. Just put out the intraday chart on ONGC.
Why?
No,
is
I think
the foreign listing, or is it?
No. There's a report in Financial Express which is saying that the government may exempt ONGC from subsidy sharing even if crude goes beyond 70. I mean, if that is the case, then obviously ONGC is looking at re-rating. Though, I mean, I'll have my doubts whether there's a proposal like that can go through. But that's the reason that you're seeing this kind of move, stock up about 3%.
At the moment, there is not much of a subsidy burden at all.
It's not, but the risk is if crude goes above 70. In that case, the reason
crude is above 70.
It is 71, 72.
Okay.
70 as in the overall
Average.
net realization, the Indian crude basket. I mean, we are hanging somewhere around there. If it goes above that, then perhaps there's a bit of a risk factor. So that's the reason. But that's a Financial Express report. The stock is reacting to that. But in the past, of course, there have been issues on this one as well. Andrew, so going forward, what do you do in a market like this? Because we've discussed problems all year long, and the markets keep making new highs. The broader market, of course, struggled in the first half of the year, but even that's making a bit of a comeback.
Yeah, so you're right. It's you just have to sometimes wait for a correction if it's coming. That is, my belief that it is because of what we're seeing from the currency markets and the commodities markets. But let me think about it in 2 ways. Let's say there's a trade war with China and the US or the European Union. Then India does stand out as a domestic-driven economy. It might take a bit of a hit on the currency in the short term, but that means it's a relative outperformer, and I think that's good news. And I think that's what we've been seeing recently. But if I take that the trade wars actually doesn't happen, and we go back to kind of global growth, then the prospect then is obviously higher interest rates globally, and the fact that you'll have that impacting emerging markets again, then probably India becomes a relative underperformer because the export countries will be the ones which you'll be looking to increase weightage to on a global basis. So it's kind of one of those double-edged sword for India at the moment. It's looking good in a more fraught kind of global environment in terms of trade, but if we go back to growth again, then obviously we're going to face those headwinds of higher interest rates, which will probably quickly start to happen from September onwards. So it's where you place the bets on the trade talks between China and the US in the short term.
The biggest money spinner over the last 6 to 12 months, Andrew, has been in the consumption basket. I mean, most of these stocks are still sitting at all-time highs. But this morning, we got some disconcerting views from the management of Titan, where they said that there is slowdown visible. And, the months of August, or rather, the last couple of months have not panned out too well. Do you think this sector has peaked in terms of growth, or are there still opportunities here?
No, I still think there's opportunities. I don't think the consumption story is going away from India for a very long time. You're going to get these periods of companies, parts of the industry not doing as well in the short term, but over the long term, the consumption story is something you have to play. In terms of the longer term growth, and you're seeing it in terms of top line and bottom line profitability from all of the companies. So I think the GST introduction is just the level playing field is there, and that's going to be a big kicker for earnings over the next 3 to 5 years. So it's not any setback is an opportunity for us.
Okay. Yes, consumption story still going very strong, and that explains why there are so many people, Alibaba and Amazon and Reliance and everyone competing for a pie. Andrew, what about pharma? I mean, it has a rupee tailwind now, and it seemed to be emerging from the shadows.
Yes, depends how you kind of describe the shadows, but I just can't force myself over the line with this sector. It's kind of been beaten down. You can put it into the view that it is where the IT sector was 1.5 to 2 years ago, so therefore there's value. But tomorrow I'll wake up and find out there's another US regulation which has hit one of the companies, or the drug pricing's under pressure. So I'm not overly convinced. I can see why you dip your toes into this sector. I can see why you'd want to do it, but fundamentally I'm just not convinced.
Okay, then before we let you go, we have to ask you about Man U. I mean, the season has been quite tough, right? We saw it with the game yesterday. I think there was a final nail in the coffin. You think it's going to be a hard one for this
You should not be saying that. Arsenal are in relegation zone.
Well, I'm talking in isolation, okay? I can talk in isolation as well.